Hey everyone, welcome back to Beat the Sheet, an Xbox Game Pass challenge. The only podcast aiming to complete every single one of the now over 400 titles that have been made available on Xbox Game Pass since the start of 2020. As always, I'm your host Andy Wood, and I'm joined by my co-host Josh.
Hello, it's that time again.
Alright, so on this week's show, a lot of people lose a lot of limbs, and we try to keep our heads in Ninja Gaiden 2. We try to keep control of our dinos in Jurassic Park Evolution. Game Pass plays dirty by sneaking another game onto the current list of leaving soon titles. And Square Enix brings another huge Final Fantasy title to the service, which is always nice for our backlogs, isn't it, Josh?
I mean, you could say that, but I wouldn't agree. Never nice. Never nice. No more games. End Game Pass now.
Just leave it as it is. It's fine. We've got enough games.
It's got enough.
Oh, well then, how's your week been this week, Josh?
My week's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. My Dreamcast turned up. I mentioned that I bought one last week, and it's turned up. It's suitably yellow. I kind of expected it to be very yellow, but nothing prepares you for just how yellow it is when you look at them these days, Little sad, but what can you do? You kind of deal with it. I've bought about 11 games for this fin already. I've just got an absolute tear of Dreamcast games. So naturally, the one I've spent the most time with, I've played Who Wants to Be a Millionaire for 6 hours trying to beat Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, because I apparently am not smart enough to win this game. I just cannot win. I knew I was in trouble when I booted it up, and I didn't know the very first question. I went, oh God, I can't even get the first question right. This isn't good.
I mean, you've kind of run into like just a minefield of knowledge, surely, because it must be. I'm assuming the game is like assuming that you know current events, but current events are actually from like 1999 in the game. So it's like stuff that nobody bothers to know about anymore now. Or are you just stupid? I don't know.
There's a bit of that. I mean, I am just stupid, but there's a bit of that. There's a bit of, current event. I mean, they gave me a question about Brookside, for God's sake, which for listeners in the States is an old UK soap which ended about 20 years ago. So, of course, I didn't know the answer to that. But, I mean, there's been some dodgy questions, man. I really want to go deep into this game because it's hilariously weird. Like, there's no audience. There's no virtual representation of Chris Tarrant. When you phone a friend, they've done pre-recorded voice lines from people going, hello, Julie. And he goes, hello, Chris. And that is kind of the voice that they use. I'm not really exaggerating that.
Nice.
Much.
All right.
And they give you these answers, and then you get an answer out of them. And then it's sodding Ron. You're absolutely furious. I was just so angry with Rob, who gave me an incorrect answer for a question. I was on £125,000, and I put my faith in him. And he was bloody Ron. I couldn't believe it. The audience is always Ron. The game is constantly trying to make you pick the wrong answer. It's kind of hilarious. And yeah, I mean, I've got to 500,000 once. And I got to the £1 million question. I didn't get it right. It was about bees and the Isle of Wight disease. I don't know what the heck that is.
Yeah, I've never heard that before in my life, so...
The worst thing is I picked my incorrect answer. Chris Tarrant gave me the whole, you've just lost £468,000. I was like, thanks, Chris. And then the cheeky bastards played almost like a Resident Evil Mansion theme style of the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire theme song. It just went, wah, wah, wah. I was like,
just making sure you know you're a massive loser.
It does it on no other time when you get a question wrong. Does it do the sarcastic Who Wants to Be a Millionaire theme? On the £500,000 question, it just goes wah, wah, wah. Wah, 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 wah. It's killer, man.
I mean, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, let it never be said that you don't take this challenge seriously. With 6 hours on Dreamcast, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? It's wow, fantastic.
I'll beat it eventually. I mean, I have to. I can't physically carry on with my life until I win that game. The questions are starting to loop, so I'm getting to the point where I've answered them already. So eventually, I'm just gonna get a clean run through. But anyway, how's your week going?
Yeah, my week's been fine. It was my birthday last week, which was, potentially nice. I was going to spend it playing a bit of Mario 3D World Bowser's Fury, which came out on the same day. That's always, it's always a nice thing when a fun new game comes out on the same day. And then 1 hour before my birthday, a new Game Pass Leaving Soon title appeared. So I scrapped my original plan and played Game Pass for the entire birthday. So somewhat depressing there. I did eventually manage to put about an hour into Mario 3D World, although I've not touched Bowser's Fury yet. I just played some of the original 3D World in two-player co-op, which was surprisingly very fun, actually. I only played it in single player when it came out originally on the Wii U, and I kind of didn't really get why you'd play with more people, but it works better than I thought it would. It's very fun.
It looks like a good game. I mean, Game Pass has done you proper dirty by robbing you of a birthday of joy. Yeah. Like, at least when I had my birthday, I just played Final Fantasy VII Remake all day. You couldn't even get an hour or two. You just got dirted right in the face. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah, just face planted me right in that mud. So that was nice. But anyway, we have quite a lot of games to cover this week, so let's get rolling right into it.
Okay, there have been 3 new additions to the Xbox Game Pass service this week, and they are Final Fantasy XII, The Zodiac Age, Jurassic World Evolution, and Stealth Inc. 2, A Game of Clones. What did you make of this lineup then? There's only 3 games, but a lot of hours of us to actually get through here. There's like 80 hours, I think.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I mean, I said in the opening there's a lot of games to cover this week, and it's not necessarily that there's a lot of games, but there's a lot of game here. That's the problem. There is a lot of game. I mean, on the whole, I think this is a pretty good week. You know, it's like for the neutral anyway. You know, for the neutral person who isn't trying to beat all of Game Pass. You know, you've got a big Final Fantasy title. That's always good. You've got some indie goodness there with Stealth Inc. And then a big weird theme parky kind of game, you know, that's for probably a different audience to the other two. So it's a well balanced week. It's, you know, there's some decent stuff there, but yeah, just a lot of time for us.
Yeah, too much time here, really, isn't there? I mean, it's got another one of those games similar to The Blob, in which I've heard about it for years and have been purposefully avoiding it in Stealth Inc. 2. I've never wanted to play this game, and Game Pass has found a way to make me put some hours into it. So kudos to them then. I'm mainly looking forward to playing Final Fantasy XII. I saw this get added and I immediately placed an order to own this game on a PlayStation because I was like, I ain't rushing this game when it comes to Limson. I'm going to make sure I have the time to beat it and not have to worry about it. But yeah, that's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to actually sinking some hours into that. I almost did this week, but I decided to play Black instead. So, you know, that kind of serves me right, really. But We'll give some impressions on FF12. You played a lot of this on the PS2 and a little bit of the Zodiac Age, which is a kind of like chopped and re-screwed version into it. It's just tidying things up from the original. Yeah. New painter, bit of polish, few little gameplay tweaks. What have you made of it so far?
Yeah, so I played about 25 hours of this back on the PS2, although that was way after the game actually came out. I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago, so yeah, it wasn't at launch. It was definitely when the next generation was well underway. But played a bit of it then. I found it a little bit slow and trudging. You know, it's a bit tedious, to be honest. Somehow I still found 25 hours for it. But, you know, I was a university student at the time, so you can find hours for anything at that point in your life, to be honest. So, yeah, eventually I fell off it, ended up losing my memory card, which served as a good excuse to not play anymore. But, yeah, I picked it back up this week on the Xbox. And, yeah, I've ended up putting about 5 hours into this. And I'm actually having a really good time with it. It's a weird game to get into, is Final Fantasy XII, because to kind of give a bit of an overview of what this is compared to the other Final Fantasies, for example, you know, it's a big Japanese RPG, of course, but it kind of differs by when this game first came out. It was one of the only games that had a battle system where the monsters are actually just in the world, so you don't kind of get some camera cut off into some dramatic battle theme, you know, battle scene thing happening. This is literally just, you see a monster in the area, you walk up to it and you fight it, which is, you know, it's pretty cool. And I mean, for when this game came out, you know, back in 2006, it was really cool that it could do that. Now, the problem with it is the battle system it doesn't feel particularly action-packed. Like it almost plays like an old MMORPG, like an online RPG, in that it's almost like you kind of tell your character to attack, and then you just sit there and wait while you wait for like an attack meter to fill up. And when it fills up, he'll do an attack. And it's like, it's very inactive and very, you know, you don't feel a part of it at all times, which can make it difficult to get into at the start. But if you stick with it, it does get a hell of a lot better. This game has a weirdly sort of deep combat system, which is almost designed to be played as if you don't even need to play the game, is the best way I can describe it. This game basically uses this system called gambits, which are rules that you give to the other characters in your team. And they can be stuff as simple as, attack the same enemy that I'm going to attack, or attack the enemy with the lowest health, or something like that. And then you can also add stuff like, if any person in the team goes below half health, give them a potion or cast a cure spell or something like that. And as the game goes along, you get more and more slots to add more rules to each person in the party. And the kind of goal with the game is really, as you get deep into it, is that you'll just have this big layer of different rules that they should follow in different situations. And then effectively the game pretty much plays itself, which to the me from about 10 years ago trying to play this, I found that a bit dull and boring. Whereas I kind of appreciate it more now. I actually think it's quite cool that you kind of, you're setting up all these layers of systems and rules for all the different characters. And if you set them up well, everything will just run really smoothly, I'm only 5 hours in on my new save, and it's really bare bones at this point. You don't have a lot going on. But even at this point, I've got the characters set up so that, if someone falls below half health, we get healed. And then if everyone's fully healed, we all just beat the crap out of the monster in front of us. And even that's quite satisfying, because I just, I can just kind of watch it unfold, and it just works as I've planned it, and it's all quite nice. So yeah, it's a tricky one to get into. I could see a lot of people starting this up, playing about 2 hours and being like, this is the most boring RPG battle system I've ever seen, and then just turning it off. But if you can find the time to dig a bit deeper into it, put a few more hours into it, there is something good under that. And I would say as well, this remake comes with a speed up option, which is an absolute godsend. So you can tap the bumper button to basically run the game at double speed. And in the options as well, you can change that to be times 4 speed. But for me, that's too much. Like times 4 speed, you can't even really see what's happening anymore. Whereas times 2, it's quite good to be able to just toggle that on and off, So like if you're fighting a simple battle against some weak enemy that you're going to beat, then just tapping that on and letting it zoom past is really nice. It improves the game a lot. So yeah, it's, like I said, really difficult one to get into, but there's a great game under that surface. So I'm hoping to find more time to keep chipping away at it.
I like the sound of the battle system, partly because a lot of RPGs do essentially boil down to you're going to heal somebody below 50%. You're going to try and make each person attack one monster to take it down before you move on to the next one. It's essentially just streamlining a process you'd do anyway. It's not really taking away a gameplay experience. You're just not pressing all the buttons. It's just doing what you would have done if you were to press them all, which is kind of nice. And I imagine it's fairly easy to just drop in and, take charge of things if you absolutely have to. If things are going disastrously wrong, you can edit things on the fly and take greater control. But I think that's quite a nice idea, to be honest. I mean, these giant RPGs, battles can become a little bit one-dimensional, a little bit, you know what you're going to do, you know how you're going to win, and you just go and do it. To have the speed up options, to have the gambits coming in to streamline the experience, you can just focus on the story, focus on the world. And by all accounts, it's got a gorgeous world. The game, for something which is technically 15 years old, looks pretty nice. I played the opening hour and it looks good. It's a pretty decent remaster. I mean, it's not going to blow your mind, but it's perfectly clean. It's perfectly tidy. The score sounds completely on point. The score sounds real good in this game. I'm liking that a lot. It sounds better than 15, which I liked, but I was a little bit more up and down with. This one sounds real good. So yeah, I think this seems like a decent time. I mean, I'm not going to start a 50-hour RPG, play 2 hours, and then move on to our next batch of Leaving Soon games. I'm going to try and carve out a proper chunk of time to give this a go. So it's going to be a while before I get to it. But I am looking forward to getting to it. I think this is a great title for any JRPG lovers out there.
Yeah, I agree completely. And as you said, the music is great in this. And they even give you a ton of options of it as well. Like you can, in the options menu, you can pick if you want the original PS2 soundtrack, which, largely isn't recommended. It sounds old because they couldn't really do the best, they couldn't do the best, they didn't have the best technology to make that music really sing back then. But you can put it on if you want, or you can use the reorchestrated stuff. Or there's even a third option, which just plays the music as it was released on like an original soundtrack CD at the time, which, it's a bit niche, but it's cool that it's there for kind of super fans. And yeah, as you said, this looks good. I mean, it's very much a HD coat of paint on a PS2 game, this one. This isn't this isn't FF7 remake. This isn't, it's not a remake level of thing. They very much just put some, new textures to an extent, but mainly just put a HD coat of paint on it. But it looks good. The world looks good. Most of the character models look good. The only place it really shows its age for me is the faces and the facial expressions. They look very PS2, but other than that, it all works well. And as I said, I just think it's a great game to come to Game Pass. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. I would definitely recommend you try and stick it out past what feels like a bit of a slow plodding initial, 5 or 6 hours even, to be honest. It takes a good while to get going. But if you power through that, there's some good stuff here for definite. It also has, actually, I need to mention before I move on, the way that you can unlock new abilities for your characters in this game and also unlock the ability to use new weapons and armor is the most weirdly tedious concept. And yet I like the system. Like, I don't know if you've dug into this much yet, but basically each character gets a license board and you get points to unlock squares on this license board. And it's like, unless you unlock a license, you literally can't equip a sword. So you have to get a license to be able to equip the sword. And if you don't have the license, it's like, sorry, mate, now you've got the sword, but you can't put it on. You don't have the sword license. And it's just like, I don't know who thought that was a good idea, like back when this game got made, but the system is actually really quite good. It's just, I don't know, maybe the dressing around it just makes it sound a hell of a lot more boring than it is.
It's wonderfully narky. Is what I like about it. The idea, I know you're not licensed to use this sword. You're not allowed this fun. I think it's tied quite closely into the job system, which has had a bit of an overhaul for Zodiac Age, because before I believed you could only have a job class to a character, whereas now you can have multiple classes, which means you have a lot more options for your party rather than being drilled into just one route and picking it early. So that's nice. I'd say anybody who has played Final Fantasy 12 15 years ago, I don't know if this is necessarily a must-play remaster. I guess it depends how much you loved it. If you did love the experience and you want a streamlined, polished version of it, then this is pretty good. But I think if you didn't like it at the time, or if you just skipped it for whatever reason, this is definitely a very good time to jump back on board. It's nice that we've got the proper remaster. They didn't fob us off with the PS2 game. So yeah, it's nice that it's on the service, it's here ready to play. Yeah, I'd say give this a go, particularly if you're a fan of the FF series.
Yep, completely agree with that. And, for us as well, that ability to speed the game up does mean that we can get through it a little bit quicker, which is always appreciated. Like, I think this is down at about a 60-hour game for the PS2 version. And then the Zodiac Age is down at about 40 hours on howlongtobeat.com. So, yeah, bit of liberal use of that speed up button might help us a bit in this case.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to our next game. The theme park simulator, but it's dinosaurs. Jurassic World Evolution. I always nearly call that Jurassic Park because I just can't get on board with this new brand that I've come up with. But nonetheless, Jurassic World Evolution. Okay, what did you make of this? I've played the first island of this. You've played the first two. It's interesting, although I can't say I'm a massive fan of this genre to be given this much of a wholehearted recommendation. But what did you think?
Yeah, so first of all, Game Pass is becoming a great place for people who like simulation type games like this. Yes. You've now got, you can manage dinosaurs in Jurassic World Evolution. You've got hospitals in 2 Point Hospital. You've basically got Roller Coaster Tycoon in the form of Planet Coaster. There's just a ton of options, which is great. It's usually quite a underserviced genre, so it's great that there's so many options. Now this game is bit of a tricky one for me. I appreciate some of the decisions they've made here because they've tried to separate themselves from just a straight up theme park game. This game actually leans a lot more into imagine the biggest air quotes in the world here, listeners, but it kind of goes into like the science aspect of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. Like, you spend a lot of time in this game you send people out to like dig sites so they can get new new samples of dinosaurs, and then you use those to kind of genetically engineer and modify the dinosaurs in your theme park. And the game goes from more of an angle of like messing with the genetics of the dinosaurs makes them more interesting, which means more people want to come and see them and stuff like that, which isn't necessarily the direction I expected the game to go in. I thought this was just going to be a straight up theme park game, like you make your enclosures, you put some dinos in them, you put some, attractions and rides around the area to make it more fun for people, pretty simple stuff. Whereas it actually goes down a completely different path, really. This game spends a lot of time with the idea of genetically modifying these dinosaurs, but then also stuff like you've got like different teams in the theme park. You've got like science teams and security teams, and they all want you to do different things. Like the security team wants you to breed dinosaurs that like kick a lot of ass and have them like win fights with other dinosaurs. And then you can sell those dinosaurs to someone, so that's all really shady. The science people just want to do loads of research. And then you got like an entertainment wing as well. They want their own thing. So there's a lot of depth here, but I'm not quite sure it comes together in the perfect way for me.
No, this is kind of a strange game. I will say what it does get across is just how messed up as a concept Jurassic Park really is. You don't really clock onto the whole cloning, genetic modification things in the movie, despite the fact it's front and center that all I'm thinking is look at that big dino. That's all I ever really took from those films, but it is kind of messed up. And when you first clone a dinosaur, it comes out of the smoke like it's, performing as stars in your eyes, like walks out into the big dino enclosure. It's kind of cool. And then you follow it about and you have a look at it and it's eating grass. And you think, I am a god. I created you. And that's kind of exciting. That's kind of fun. And it kind of does capture a lot of the feel of the movies, partly helped by the fact it has actual voice actors from the films. Jeff Goldblum is here. He's actually lent his actual voice. It's not an impersonator. That's really cool. I like that a lot. Jeff Goldblum will elevate many things that he does because he's got a fantastic cadence to his voice. And you got Bryce Dallas Howard here as well. She reprises her role from the new movies. And BD1, I think, is here as well. Everybody else is not playing their characters. So if you're thinking, why does Chris Pratt sound like he's just taken the biggest bag of meth in the world? That's because it's not Chris Pratt. It sounds like a weirdly odd version of him. And I don't quite know why they mixed and matched and maybe just made new characters. But nonetheless, it's kind of cool that they're there. There's loads of lore, there's loads of dino facts. There's a lot there for people who love this universe to dig into, but it is very beholden to a park sim. And so you kind of have to love park sims to get a lot out of this.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think my two main issues with this game come down to, and I mean, the second one here, you won't have experienced yet because it really comes in after the first park. So first issue I have is that when you start off a new park in this game, whether it's your first park or your second or your third, you don't have much money and you need to start building a lot of stuff. And the way the game handles this is largely just by making you wait for a lot of time. It almost feels like a kind of free-to-play mobile game. Like I'm expecting a pop-up to come up saying like, oh, this is going to take 3 minutes, but if you give us some money, we'll speed it up. Like it feels like it's going to do that because it's like early on, you're sending these people off for expeditions, which takes about 2 minutes each. Then when they get back, you've got to work with the fossils, which takes about 40 seconds per fossil. And like you're doing that to try and like build up some money and get some dinosaurs ready to make. You set your dinosaurs to incubate to build them. That takes a few minutes. And especially early on in a park when you're just trying to get started, it feels like you spend half an hour, 40 minutes just waiting for these bars to fill, just waiting for the expedition to come back, for the fossil to finish. And it's really quite slow and tedious. And then you get to a new park and it happens again. Like it's not a case of you've done it once, now it's done. I mean, in my second park, I spent the first hour at least very, very slowly waiting for like my money to trickle up just enough that I could build another dinosaur. And like nobody liked the place because there was like one dinosaur in the park. And I'm just like, what do you want me to do? Like they're like, oh, you're not making much profit. I was like, yeah, because there's one poor little lonely triceratops sat there bored shitless. Like that's why I'm making no money. Who's going to come and see that? So yeah, it takes a long time to get going at the start. And then the other issue is that as you get further into the second level, which is the first real non-tutorial level in this game starts to show you all the ways it's going to screw you at every turn. Like, for example, so you've got, like we said earlier, you've got these three factions, the science, entertainment, and security divisions. And when you do any mission for one of them, it makes them like you more, but makes the other two hate you more. And from the second mission onwards, if the other people hate you, they'll just randomly sabotage the park. So like you're like literally like you're in the middle of like loads of stuff. You got some stuff going on, and then it'll just come up saying, "Oh, it looks like the security team have turned off the power for 5 minutes." So then the power's down. So then there's nothing's working. You've probably at this point you've got dinosaurs in electric fences. The electric fences are off. So the dinosaurs just smash through the fence and start killing people. And everyone's just like, oh, whoopsie, we probably should have done more work for the security team. They've turned off the power and murdered people. Oh, well, what are we going to do? And then literally that happens like quite often. And it's the same for all three groups. Like the science people don't like you. So they've like ran off with some stuff or they've stole some money. And you're just like, why is everyone working against me? Like, I understand the idea of doing jobs for different people, but you can't just turn the power off and murder people. Like, it's a bit much, especially because we just immediately get over it then it's just like, well, I better start doing work for that security man. He just murdered 15 people with a friggin' velociraptor. It's just nonsense. And so there's that. And then also as well, like once you get the second park, you start dealing with some bigger, more vicious dinosaurs. Velociraptors aren't big, but they're definitely vicious. And in my experience, they just break out of the fence all the time for literally no reason. Like at first I thought, oh, maybe I'm not making them happy enough. Maybe they don't like their surroundings they're in. No, every single aspect of the dinosaur was like 100% happy. They loved where they were. But about every 2.5 minutes, they just smash through the fence and frig off and eat people. I was just like, what is this? I ended up like, because when you first start that level, I only had like a light fence. And I was like, oh, fair enough. The light fence, that's not enough to keep them in. So I unlocked a heavy fence. Nah, still not good enough. Still just barged out. Then I put up an electric fence. They still jabbed away at it and just hurt themselves on the fence until it broke. So yeah, in the end, I ended up having like a velociraptor den that had 3 layers of fence around it with like 3 gates for my people to get in when they need to go in. And even then they'd still break through the first layer or 2 of the gate like every 5 minutes. And I'd have to send a helicopter like to tranquilize them to make them stop. It's just honestly like you spend more time putting out constant fires, whether it's your security team trying to kill you or the dinosaurs themselves trying to kill you. You spend more time doing that than you do actually having any kind of fun by the end of level 2. So I dread to think what's going to happen in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th levels of this game.
Well, this is Park Sims. Park Sims are, for all intents and purposes, our least favourite genre, the job game. You're once again just doing a job. You don't have any choice in the matter. You've just got to put up with it, deal with the shit. I love the fact that the actual teams are working against you. I've not got far enough to have this. What sort of union are these people signed up to? That they can murder people in the actual park and keep their jobs. I absolutely love that. I want to sign up to that union. I'd love to go to work one day, just knife somebody and go, well, should have listened to me when I said to put that feature in. It's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, do you remember when you listened to that other team? Well, you've been shanked now, haven't you? So maybe next time you'll listen to me. It's just it's absolute nonsense. Like because they introduced that to you in the first level. They say, oh, the different teams, they'll be all battling for your attention. You need to try and keep them all happy. And like, sure, fair enough, but not to this extent. Like, come on, this is ridiculous.
Not to the point of actively murdering the park inhabitants. That's crazy. I mean, That's absolutely bonkers. But I did fear for that mechanic when they introduced it. I looked at it and thought, why does doing anything for somebody else piss off everybody else? Can you imagine if the real world worked this way? If you was, going for a nice stroll with your girlfriend and like you helped an old woman cross the street and she just got pissed with you.
Yeah, it's like you didn't help me cross the street.
Exactly. It's like you can't have these. These are human reactions. You can't hate everything that somebody does which isn't for you. Who are these giant sociopaths who are running this park? It
sounds like the whole park unfolds like just being on Twitter. It's just what Twitter is. It's just, you did something nice to someone else, but let's find all the reasons why that was wrong and we hate you. It's just, that's how this game works. And it's just nonsense. But yeah, I mean, look, I would say, there's positives to this game. It's very, like, I think it's a really cool game to actually put a park together in, like, I quite like theme park games. And obviously, having a theme park full of dinosaurs is inherently going to be quite cool. So, it's quite nice when you've got your enclosures of all these different types of dinosaurs and you have to kind of be clever about which dinosaurs you put where, because, some of them have different requirements for, some of them are like loners and other ones want a big pack around them. And you've got to kind of balance out, the needs of the dinosaurs with the space you've got in the park. There's fun decisions to be made there. And also it's one of those games again, where when you've built a really cool park and you kind of zoom out and look at it all, it is a really satisfying thing. So there's definitely positives to this. There really is. But I mean, the most damning indictment of this game for me came from my girlfriend, actually, because she's probably the biggest Jurassic Park fan that I've ever met. and also loves games like Theme Park and 2 Point Hospital. And she just got sick of this game and fell off it after about 5 hours. So if even she can't be bothered playing a Jurassic Park theme park game, I do not hold out much hope for other people.
Yeah, it's definitely one of them. It's one of those games where the dinosaurs are going to be needy bastards. The people you're dealing with are needy bastards. And I can't deal with that. I can't deal with video game characters just endlessly squawking up to tell me that they need something. That has always irked me. And moreover, it's yet another theme park game where I don't understand the concept of electricity. I wish that I did. Nothing makes me feel stupider than when I boot up one of these games. I put something down and nothing happens. And then it goes, no, you need to put some pylons near it. And then I'm trying to build a pylon into the facility and going, it won't let me build a pylon. What do you want me to do? Every time. I don't understand electricity. I clearly don't understand it because it's just a miracle to me when it works. One time I just built something and I couldn't even believe it was working. I didn't even know what I did. I just put some wires near it. I didn't know what happened. And I'm sick of this happening. It happened in City Skylines. It's happened here. It's just going to keep happening until I just give up. So, yeah, I'm not looking forward to having to come back to this one.
No, that's fair. I mean, I don't fully get how the power works in this game, and I've played about 10 hours of it. Like, it's really weird. Like, I got to a point in my second island where I'd made a ton of power plants all over the place. And one of my buildings had no power, just one. And at this point, I've got about 80 different things that need power. And it's like, oh, that one over there doesn't have power. So I'm going around my park, and I've got like about 7 different power stations that are all hooked up to the same network on these pylons. And one of them just isn't using any of its power. And it's like, oh, well, I've generated 60 power and I've still got 60 to use. And I'm like, why are you not powering that one building over there then? Like, what's going on? I literally don't even know. I have no idea why it wasn't working. So yeah, I agree with you. I'm a bit sick of power in these games. If you take away the need for power, I will enjoy you more.
Yeah, I actually don't know why these Sims don't just remove the electricity part. Nobody boots up one of these things and goes, God, I wish I could deal with the electricity problems in these parts. Nobody has ever thought that. It's such a useless, annoying contrivance. Can't we just assume that electricity comes from the ground or like a pack of Pikachus you've got hidden behind the screen? And just let's move on with our lives. We don't need to be building pylons every 3 seconds while your dinosaur's moaning that it's not eating enough people. These games just irk me. It's just people nagging. It's Jurassic World nagging edition, and I can't deal with it. It
really is. Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And look, I mean, the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park / World are basically just a made-up mess anyway. I mean, the storylines in the movies now go into that heavily anyway, that they're just a genetic pile of nonsense. Why not just make an electric dinosaur? That'll do it. Just there you go. We made a zappy dinosaur. He sits in the building and he zaps everywhere to life. It's all fine. Just, yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, but I don't know. If you're into these sort of games, give it a go by all means. But I think it's fair to say it's not our preferred genre of choice. Yeah. So, speaking of probably not our preferred genre of choice, here comes a puzzle game which is masquerading as a stealth game. Stealth Inc. 2, A Game of Clones. Now, this is the sequel to the much better titled Stealth Bastard, which launched on the PC and should never have lost its branding. That's such a funnier name than what they've got now.
Yeah.
And essentially, this game is a massive fraud because you think it's going to be a stealth game. And it isn't really. It's kind of more like a Super Meat Boy platformer with some puzzle elements.
Yeah, exactly. This is like if you combine Super Meat Boy with, and I mean, I hate to even bring it up again, but Death Squared, that stupid game where you had to play as a bunch of cubes and things came out of the ground and stabbed them. You know, that's what this is. But yeah. And as you said as well, yeah, I agree completely. Stealth Bastard was a better name. They ended up having to rename it because they went from being a PC-only game to coming out on the PlayStation. So they had to rename the games. And I think they had a community contest, actually, to rename the first game. And then the winners of that like got copies of the game and got put in the credits and stuff. And yeah, so sadly we lost the Stealth Bastard name, and now we have Stealth Inc., A Game of Clones, a name which has aged awfully now that people couldn't care less about A Game of Thrones. But but nonetheless, yeah, as you said, it's just a fraud. You know, I don't even like stealth games that much, but I would have preferred a stealth game to another indie puzzler because I feel like we play a lot of indie puzzlers. And yeah, I mean, this seems fine as one of those, but I just don't feel like playing it right now, to be honest. It's just, you know, it's just one of those things. Like, you walk through the levels, there's some brief stealth elements in that there's cameras and you have to like hide in shadows when they go past to not be seen by them. But that's as far as the stealth goes, really. Beyond that, it's just, at least so far, I've only played about the first 10 levels out of 50 or so. But so far, it's literally just your typical like flick some switches, push some blocks, climb up stuff, puzzle game. There's not a lot separating this from games we've played before.
Yeah, I mean, the stealth elements as well are very tied in closer to the platforming elements. This is a Twitch platformer at heart. It wants you to do everything very quickly. There's a very early level, for example, where you unleash some fog into the area, and the fog knocks off the security cameras so that you can actually get past them without having to worry about it. But the section it wants you to do about a series of 8 jumps with fans and stay into the fog, is an absolute nightmare of pixel-perfect platforming, built upon a system which isn't particularly satisfying. It's not a great platformer. This is the problem with stealthing more than anything else. As a platformer, it's deeply unsatisfying to play. The jump doesn't feel particularly nice. I don't like the way the little shit controls. Everything about it just kind of irks me. It doesn't feel good. It constantly wants you to move with wind, for example, but it doesn't have the sense that when you're running towards it, to accept the directional arrow to just let you go across anywhere. You have to move with it, which means that you'll frequently stop in midair and just fall to the floor. This happens all the time to me. It's really irksome. It's pixel perfect as well. You have to be spot on with your timing, which is okay, but it's irksome in a stealth game more than anything else, because then you need to reset up all the puzzle. You need to get back to where you were again. The game sets up these fairly simplistic puzzles, which you figure out how to do, and then you just need to execute it. And that kind of becomes tedious, because the joy of a puzzle game is figuring out how to do it. It's not really doing it. The doing it part should be the easy bit. That's the bit that just comes naturally once you've thought about it. Stealthing 2 puts all its emphasis on the doing, and the doing is deeply unsatisfying to me. And that's kind of where the game falls down for me.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And as I said earlier as well, when I compared this to Death Squared, which, it's again, not very good puzzle game we covered a few weeks back. Now, the way I compare it to that is that it does that annoying thing where some of its puzzles are intentionally set up so that you will run into the area, get killed, and then you have to figure out, like, you won't see the thing that's going to kill you unless you like walk over something and trip the trap, like the trap or something, set it off, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to do that again now because you clearly set that up to kill me the first time around. Which I hate design like that, especially in a game like this, which actually, when you finish a level, gives you grades for how many times you died and how quick you worked through it. So it's like, I'm not going to do your levels twice, Stealthing 2, but you've just screwed me over and killed me 3 times, so now I got like a C. I just it's very frustrating. And yeah, I don't know, as I said, the game is fine, it really is, but it's not the kind of game I enjoy playing particularly. It puts way too much emphasis on its platforming, considering it's not particularly great to play. And they make the same mistake in the platforming as well, which is that there'll be jumps that you won't know how to make that jump unless you try it once. Like, there'll be a gust of wind behind you and you won't click on that's even there until you try the jump and don't make it. And then you're like, oh, okay, I need to like jump higher up and use the wind to get across and stuff. And they just do a lot of that. And yeah, I just don't think it's the tightest designed puzzle game.
Yeah, it's trial and error, isn't it? And trial and error puzzles are frustrating. Trial and error platforming can also be quite frustrating. So combining the two does make for, and I wouldn't necessarily call Stealthing a frustrating game, because the checkpoint system's fairly kind. Like, you're never going back much more than 2 or 3 seconds. It's just more annoying than anything else. It's just, oh, that's killed me, okay. And then you move back. It's not particularly funny. The game thinks it's funny, but it isn't. And cheap deaths are never particularly amusing. I don't get it as a human mechanic in video games, and a lot of things seem to like doing it. It doesn't do much for me, but I'd say weirder still in this game is it's kind of built this Metroidvania world, which you navigate to get to different hubs and to different levels. And this, to me, is mind-bogglingly boring. Like, it's really tedious to navigate. And the world itself is filled with puzzles. But once you've done a puzzle, it doesn't get solved. If you come across it again, you've got to do it again. And that's really tedious. If you take a wrong turn, you're stuck doing a puzzle you did 30 minutes ago for no apparent reason. And if it's another one of those pixel-perfect Twitch platforming ones, you're going to fail it a couple of times, despite the fact you know how to do it. It's just irksome. It's a very poor Metroidvania because a lot of the time you'll go down a path and you can't make any progress anyway. It had no need to be there. It's clearly designed so that once you've got all the gadgets, which you unlock as you get later into the game, there's 48 levels you have to complete and 12 bonus secret levels. You gain gadgets per 8 levels you do. I mean, that's when you're going to start using them to navigate this world. But by the time you've done that, you've done all these puzzles about 7 or 8 times. Who wants to go back to this world to try and get a crap cosmetic outfit? The camera zoomed so far out, you can't see it anyway. It doesn't matter if your character's wearing cowboy pajamas or not. You can't see. He could be wearing nothing for all I know. You can't tell. Yeah. So it's really strange how they've built this game into that. I'd rather just have a sequence of levels. If I'm honest with you, I'd rather they just go, here's 60 levels, figure them out. And I think that would be more enjoyable. It didn't need this overworld. I don't really think it's added much to it. I don't think it's improved the core gameplay experience in the slightest.
Yeah, no, that's completely right. I think, if this would have worked like a Super Meat Boy, where it's literally you finish a level, you press the A button, and it's like, bang, you're in the next level now. Just go, just get straight on with it. No messing around, having to like traverse through this largely pointless open area. Just get straight on with it. I'd probably be more into it. But the part that annoys me the most is traversing that open world between levels, because it's got no purpose. And as you said as well, like, you walk around and you see all these areas you can't get to because you don't have the items from the levels yet. But then that incentivizes you to go back and do that once you've pretty much finished the game. So why do I want to finish the game and then go and unlock a funny hat? Like I've finished the game now. Like why would I care about getting cosmetics in an open world when I needed to finish, if not all the game, about 80% of the game to even get the item to go there? It's in the wrong order. It's just weirdly backwards. And I don't know why you would even bother to have the open world element.
I don't get it at all. I mean, I will say there's a story attached to this. It's not particularly in depth, though. I don't exactly hate it. The idea is that you're a clone who's routinely put through testing modules to test new products for this big corporation, as is apparently the joke for every video game ever made nowadays. That's another Death Squared reference to this game. It's kind of impressive. And anyway, this dude is 1 kill off becoming employee of the month, and you're just pissing him off by staying alive, despite the fact you die all the time. So I don't really get it, but nonetheless, he seems to think you're doing all right. So I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, he's just racked up about 400 kills as I tried to do that level. But, okay, whatever. So there's that. It's fine. It's kind of humorous in its own way. It's not a laugh out loud kind of setup. It's just there to give sense to the open world, which I don't think the game needs. So it's kind of it's holding up something which is unnecessary, in my opinion. So yeah, still think too. I'm not a massive lover of this. I don't hate it. I mean, it's fine, but it's the indie puzzle platformer you've played a million times and probably played a lot better. Why anybody would play this when Celeste is on the platform and it's on the service? I just no idea why you'd plump for this over a game like Celeste. It's leaps and bounds away from something as satisfying to play as that.
Yeah, spot on there. I mean, this is a game that I won't hate the idea of having to come back to it and finish it, but like I will be doing that when it's set to leave the service. I have no desire to put the 8 hours into this to finish it right now. It's a game that I will finish in about a year's time, probably when it leaves. And, maybe by the end of it, I'll like it more. But right now, it's not done a lot to entice me. So yeah, it's not something I'd recommend any of our listeners really go and seek out this week.
Okay, and moving on to our leaving soon games. So last week we told you we had 3. Well, Game Pass decided that was not enough because roughly around Thursday, I believe it was, of this week, Dirt 4 just magically appeared into the leaving soon section, apropos of nothing. So that was a pleasant treat to our weekend. So what is meant to be leaving on the 15th of February is The Blob, Ninja Gaiden 2, and leaving on the 16th, Shadows of the Damned. Dirt 4 might be leaving then, or it could be leaving February the 25th if it kind of follows the general pattern of games leaving Game Pass of having 2 weeks to play. God knows. We don't know. Microsoft hasn't confirmed it. I dare say they'll give us a date when they do their Tuesday update of what is going to be leaving Game Pass in the next 2 weeks. But for now, We don't know. So if you do want to play Dirt 4, I'd say it's fairly imperative you just get on it and hope for the best.
Well, yeah, exactly. As I said at the top of the show, I was hoping to be playing some Mario 3D World, but yeah, we can't take risks on this show. So if a game shows up in Leaving soon and we don't have a date for it leaving, then we've got to play it. We got to get it done. So yeah, been a whole lot of last minute dirt happening over here.
A lot of Valiant. Yeah, I played about 10 hours of this game.
Yeah.
It's like a day. It's all I did. But anyway, last week we reviewed The Blob and Shadows of the Damned. Do check out last week's show if you want to hear our views on that. Basically, Shadows of the Damned good. The Blob kind of sucks. And
The Blob's fine and is a decent kids game. I think is probably a better summation of what it is.
And it kind of sucks. So what we're going to cover this week, though, is Dirt 4 and Ninja Gaiden 2. So we'll start with Dirt 4, just by virtue of alphabetical order. So what have you made of the crammed rally experience you've had in the past 2 days?
Yeah, so like I said, I was initially fed up at the concept of having to play this at the last minute, especially because we played Dirt Rally 2.0 at some point last year. We reviewed it on the show because it left Game Pass. And that's a game in this series that is newer than this game. It's Dirt 4 is a 2017 game. Dirt Rally 2.0 was a 2019 game. So I just thought this is going to be more of the same, but even older. So it's a depressing prospect to spend your birthday playing that. But yeah, you know what? I got into a bit of Dirt 4, and this is a fun time. This is a hell of a lot more fun than Dirt Rally 2.0. This is much more arcadey. The rally cars in particular feel very, very floaty but fun to control. I mean, you can set higher difficulties, which turns off a lot of the assists, and I'm sure then you can kind of get your sim experience out of it. But the kind of default difficulty settings, you can just whip these things around corners, and it's actually really, really fun to do it. So yeah, I'm pretty positive on this in the end.
Yeah, I liked Dirt 4. Dirt 4, I could tell was going to be a very different experience from Dirt Rally 2.0 when it opened with a cutscene explaining what the hell your co-driver was talking about. Because Dirt Rally 2.0 never took the time to tell me what a turn 6, turn 4, turn 2 was actually about, or what a don't cut was, which my angry Scotsman I had in Dirt Rally, I thought was insulting me the entire time. But Dirt actually gives you an explanation of what this is. And that kind of made the game more fun for me because I finally understood what they were wanting me to do on these rally sections, which was kind of nice. Isn't that strange that explaining what your game is can sometimes make it more fun for people to play? Who would have thought? But yeah, no, I actually kind of like this game. This game is a lot more arcadey. It's a lot more fun. It's a lot more throw your car into corners, hit on the handbrake, do a sick turn, do some fun jumps. It's not as angsty about you running the perfect race as Dirt Rally 2.0 is, where if you make even the slightest mistake on the handling, you'll go off a cliff before you even know what's happened. Even if there isn't a cliff there, they'll make one for you, such as their displeasure with you. Dirt 4 isn't that game. It's much more casual. It's much more friendly. And for me, that made it a much more enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I think it's just a hell of a lot more fun. I mean, this is a game where realistically, because, as you said, there's the way they do these core drive things is they give you a number for the corner, and 6 is the lightest corner and 1 is the most extreme corner. So in this game, anything from like a 4 to a 6, you don't even need to slow down. You just whip around that corner fine, and that's really satisfying. And then, as you said, the smaller corners, you just use the handbrake, skid around them. It's really fun. And then also, even if you do make a mistake and you go like flying off the track, and maybe you get like a puncture in your tire or something, you can still kind of scrape your car across the finish line. And often doing that's actually as fun as whipping around the course, like if you've got a good lead in a rally and maybe you're like 20 seconds ahead of the second place person, but then like you pop your tire on the first corner, it's actually quite fun trying to, maintain that lead as you just like trudge along the track with a broken tire, or you can even like stop your car and replace the tire, which gives you like a time penalty and stuff. And yeah, it's good fun. I enjoy it.
And Dirt 4 is chock full of racing modes as well. It's not just rally, which I kind of like. It has a lot of different things. It has the rally experience you would expect, which is all about just setting trial. It's a time trial mode, essentially, is rally. You got to beat a time which everybody else is setting, and it's a pretty satisfying experience to do. You'll go across all these different courses in Portugal, Mexico, America, 3 to 4 minute stretches, stretching up to 8 to 10 minute stretches as you get further on in the game and the courses get more demanding. And it's really fun. There's a real pressure to knowing that you ace in the first 2 or 3 minutes of the course, but one bad corner can wreck you entirely. That's really fun. The rally experience is pretty damn good on this. It does have 2 other sections which I'm not quite as keen on. It has these land buggy sections, essentially. It kind of calls them that, I think it is, where you control either a hot buggy or a monster truck over almost like Daytona-esque circular courses, which, you don't even need to think about. It's all about just drifting around as best you can and smashing into everybody so that the crowd goes wild. And I never quite felt the cars were as comfortable to handle in those sections as I did in the rally ones. If you even just as much as touch the brake in those things, you just go flying into a wall and you have no real reason why you did. It's a little bit off. But I don't know. What did you make of those sections?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan at all of the dirt racing block on this. So as you said, there's the rally section, that's all great. The dirt stuff, I just don't like it. I think the buggies in particular, there's these little, I think they call them like cross carts or something. They control awfully. Like the tiniest little like brake or nudge in a direction and you just go spinning out, and that's the end of your race realistically. So I found them too frustrating to really enjoy it. I figured it out eventually and I could kind of win races, but wasn't particularly having any fun with it. And then you've also got the rallycross mode, which is like rallycross is this strange thing where it's basically just a track race but in rally cars, but then it's like it's got this concept which feels ripped out of like a video game, and yet it's part of the real event, which is that in like a 4-lap or 6-lap race, there's a joker lap where they add a chunk of like they add a chunk to the lap which takes more time, and every racer has to do that part of the lap once per race. So you have to time when the best time is to do your like slower joker lap and then get back on the track and win the race and stuff. And I mean, I love that. Like, I mean, this is more me kind of appreciating the real sport that actually does that. But I love the idea of the Joker lap. That's really cool. But the problem is I just don't think Dirt Rally's at its best when it's trying to be a track racing game. It just doesn't feel quite as right. Like if I'm going to race on a track, I'm probably going to load up like a Forza Motorsport game or something. It's not at its best there. It's at its best in the rally mode.
Yeah, it is better in its rally mode. I did get a lot of joy out of Rallycross, and it is almost entirely because of that Joker lap concept, which is great. I didn't know Rallycross did this. What a great idea for a driving
It's so
competition.
Cool. Yeah, I love it.
It's so fun that you could be, you could be down in third, but you know that the 2 people in front of you have yet to take their Joker, and you've got to make that count. That is deeply, deeply fun game design. Technically, deeply fun sport design. So well done, the designers on Rallycross, the sport.
Yeah, like
it's
I just want to.
Cool.
Yeah, I just want to watch the sport now more than anything. To be honest, I think it sounds great.
But these events are quite fun. Rallycross, its name is pretty obvious. It's a cross between rally and just traditional track driving. You will get on the dirt occasionally in the Rallycross stages where you will bump about a bit more and have to wrestle with the car a bit more. And it's just expected that you smash into everybody. There's no real penalty beyond completely totaling somebody's car. Then there'll be penalties. But most of the time you can bump and grind with people. And no one's going to get too angsty about it, which is kind of nice. I quite like that. It's a fun little mode. I happily completed the World Championship on this because it's really short. It's really tight. A lap takes all of 30 to 40 seconds to do. And there's only 4 or 5 laps per race. So it's kind of fun just to blitz through it. And it's a nice tonic from the more investing rally form of the game. I don't know. I liked a lot of this game, but I do like a good driving game. I can really submerge myself into them for all of 2 to 3 days before I'm bored. So in many ways, this has left at the perfect time for me just to submerge myself in and get out before tedium starts to set in.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, I think this game hits a pretty good kind of niche for me because I like my driving games like your Forza Horizons, which I mean they're not realistic driving games, but the cars do handle a bit more realistic than you wouldn't call them an arcade game. And then I also like my Mario Karts, which are just mad, crazy driving nonsense. So this game sits in the middle of those quite nicely, I think. You can clearly whip these cars around in completely unrealistic ways, but you do have to still be quite careful and kind of, keep an eye on the track and be mindful of the surface you're racing on and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's a nice balance. I like the arcadey nature of this. I'm hoping that, if we see Dirt 5 come to the service at some point, which I definitely think we will, if it's more like this than Dirt Rally 2.0, then I'm probably going to be pretty happy to see it.
I guess this is the biggest problem for us giving a hearty recommendation to Dirt 4, is that obviously at this point in its life, you're probably going to have to buy it if you're going to get the most out of it. And why would you buy this when a new version, which by all accounts is just as good, but 3 years, 4 years newer, is on the market?
Yeah.
It's kind of a tough sell. But I would say do download this and give it a blast. Just drive around some courses if you're into the genre, because I think there's a lot to like here. I think there's quite a bit to enjoy. The career mode is well structured and pretty satisfying to play through. You build up a team of engineers and PR dudes, and you got to stick a load of stickers on your car, and you got to appease your sponsors. And that's kind of fun. That's kind of decent. You get to create your own dude, slap your car in a hot pink. I made mine as hot pink as humanly possible because it just amused me to no end. It's really nice to see. Yeah, there's a lot to like here. There's a lot of depth. I imagine the online is dead. I didn't try it, but I would be amazed if you're picking up a lot of races on Dirt 4 now. There's been 2 games in this series which have since launched in Dirt Rally 2.0 and Dirt 5. So maybe that's a little bit old and past it, but there's a lot to enjoy. I think it's a pretty good game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I also made my car like neon pink but mine was more out of protest because this was me at like 11:30 at night the day before my birthday, realizing I had to play Dirt 4. So my team colors were just like neon pink with a lime green stripe through it, and then some kind of like yellow as bright as the sun. I just purposefully made my car ugly out of spite, and then ended up enjoying the game in my stupid ugly car. But yeah, as you said, it's probably going to be a bit quiet now. It's tricky to say buy this when it's, there's newer versions of the game, and we may well see another game in this series come to Game Pass soon because they traditionally have quite a lot. But one thing to note here is, I mean, this is all speculation at this point, but typically in the past, whenever we've seen a game leave Game Pass kind of under weird circumstances, like it wasn't part of the announcement and then it just appeared on leaving soon. Typically when that's happened, there's been a reason for it. And an example of this is when Formula 1 2018 left and we rushed through it. And then 7 days later, the year newer game got added, Formula 1 2019 got added instantly afterwards. And we had a similar thing with Pro Evo where they took that out a bit early. It wasn't a full 2 weeks, but then 2 weeks later, this year's version got put in. So there's 2 sides to look at this. One is that maybe we'll get Dirt 5 soon, which I don't think is the likely choice. The likely choice I think here is that EA are currently buying Codemasters and EA players in Game Pass. So this might just end up in EA Play. So you, as a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber, you would literally see no difference. You might actually still just be able to play Dirt 4 anyway because it's now in EA Play. So, the hope isn't lost for this to continue to be a free-to-play title for people.
Yeah, I'd say the only hope we do have is that Dirt's 1, 2, 3 and all the other games that Codemasters have developed in the past 15 to 20 years do not get added to
Please
EA
no.
Play.
Just
I can't stress enough how much I don't want that to happen.
There's so many as well.
It.
There's Dirt 1, 2, 3 Grid. They would have to play Xbox 360 Grid. Just don't put them all in. But if you want to bring this back now that we've played it anyway, that's fine.
That's perfectly acceptable. I give Dirt 4 7 out of 10. I think it's a really fun, enjoyable racing game. I don't think it's as good as, say, Forza Horizon 4, which to me is always the step above this sort of title. But I think it's a pretty good time. I also don't think it's as good as the F1 games that Codemasters make as well. But that might just be because I have more of an affinity for F1 than I do for Rallycross, because I didn't even know what a Rallycross was. So, partly that's playing into that.
Yeah, I gave this a 7 as well. I think this is really good. It doesn't do a lot wrong, really, especially in its rally stages. But maybe they could have tightened up those other modes a little bit to elevate it beyond that score. But still, 7 out of 10. Really, really good stuff. Well worth checking out. Okay,
moving on to our next game, which is Ninja Gaiden 2. Okay, so this is a culmination of a 12-year battle for young Josh, who bought this game pretty much on launch, played it on normal difficulty, got to about mission 6 or 7 and threw his controller against a wall and cried, "Never again, never again." So I was somewhat distraught when I saw this did get added to Game Pass, because I thought this is going to open up a lot of old wounds. Wounds I managed to avoid by playing it on easy difficulty. Andrew, on the other hand, played this on normal. So have you recovered from banging your head against the wall for the past 2 weeks?
I mean, I think, there's going to be some bruises on my forehead for a while, but they'll go down in time. I mean, this game, as you said, this is is difficult stuff. I initially thought I'd done the same as you, which is, played a good bit of this, about 12 years ago when it came out, and then went, this is too difficult, I'm not going to bother. But then looking at it, I had no achievements in this game. So what I think younger Andy has done is I think he's played the demo and just went, nah, sod that, and then just not even bought the game. So yeah, I came into this fearing it because it's difficult stuff, and I still played on medium because I thought that's the right thing to do. I thought I'll give it a go, and I can always turn the difficulty down if it gets too much. But no, you can't. You can't do that. So I spent about 2.5 hours getting to chapter 3, and then realized that you actually would need to start the whole game again if you were going to change difficulty. So yeah, I powered through. I stuck with it. I stuck it on medium. Yeah, I mean, the difficulty in this game it's overblown to an extent, to be honest. I think it has difficulty spikes, but once you get into a good rhythm of it, it's actually quite playable for a long time. I struggled with the early chapters, and then for the vast majority of the game, I was pretty comfortable, and then it spiked back up at the end. So I don't know. Yeah, it's maybe not as painfully difficult as I feared, but it's still going to kick your ass. You gotta stay really focused playing this one.
Yeah, I'll say that Ninja Gaiden 2 on easy difficulty is quite an enjoyable experience. Not one which I would say is a doddle. This game doesn't dumb itself down too much. This is still tricky. You still need to pay attention. Enemies can still cut you up in all of 4 hits if you're not focusing on what you're doing. They just go down a little quicker, which, helps considerably. But I think that's a bonus for these sort of things. A lot of people say why games should not have different difficulty options throughout them. I think Ninja Gaiden 2 is a very good example of why you should, because this game is a lot of fun to play on easy difficulty. And if I was playing this on normal, I'd have never been able to finish this on normal. It just would have never happened. And I'd have never seen any of the other bosses, never seen any of the other experiences that the game had to offer. For no reason other than I don't have good enough hand-eye coordination, which seems a little bit cruel if you've paid somebody money that you can't do it due to a natural failing, Yeah. Sorry about that. This game doesn't punish you for that. The developers here have given a challenging but fair enough easy difficulty for people like me to be able to play through it on. Have difficult moments, because trust me, there's plenty of moments still which are going to drive you mad. There's bosses which you can't just slash your way through without thinking. You need to think about it, but still be able to complete it, still be able to see everything this world has to offer, and actually delve into what is a very deep and satisfying combat system. By God, I love the combat in Ninja Gaiden 2.
Yeah, this game is great. I mean, for a game that is now 13 years old, this has aged fantastically well. Like, this combat system could be released today and I'd be happy with it. It's got a ton of depth to it. There's a bunch of different weapons that you can use with Ryu that all feel useful. Like, it's not, when I first started this game, you start off with a pretty typical ninja sword, and quite naively at the time I thought, right, well, this is a really difficult game. I can't afford to try and learn different weapons. I'm just going to learn this ninja sword, figure that out, and that'll get me through it. And that's not feasible, because other weapons are better at different things. You might get a staff that's really good at like crowd control because it hits multiple people at once, or you'll get something that's better for blocking, and you can dodge around quicker, and you can kind of be like invincible for little bits of time between moves and stuff like that. And and then for example, then there's other weapons that are fantastic in 1v1 situations, but they completely suck when there's a bunch of enemies. So you have to learn more weapons, and it's really actually quite enjoyable and satisfying to learn those weapons once you kind of accept in your head that you might die a couple of times while you're figuring the weapon out, which is something you just have to deal with in this game. Once you do that, there's some great stuff here. This is one of the better action, like hack and slash action games I've ever played. Frankly, the pinnacle for me is always Bayonetta, and particularly Bayonetta 2. I think Platinum Games, their work in this genre is unrivaled. But Ninja Gaiden and Ninja Gaiden 2 in particular, they have a real argument for being the second in that list at this point. I think this is really, really special.
It's really silky smooth, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, everything's beautifully gory. Limbs just get lobbed off at a moment's notice. But better yet, a removal of a limb is not enough to stop an enemy. You may need to lob off about 4 limbs before somebody finally accepts that they're dead. There was occasions where there's somebody with 3 limbs who's just crawling towards me, trying to blow himself up. So yeah. It's constantly doing that. And it plays into its mechanics that if you do lob a limb off, you have an option to take somebody down instantly. You've got to hit the button press at the right time, but you can do it. You can take them out and not forget about them. But if you do forget about them and you leave them to, fester around, it will come back to haunt you. You have to take people out when you take out limbs. It's a clever game where you have crowds of people, but it wants you to go methodically, one at a time, take people out, move around a crowd as best as you can. And it's deeply satisfying to do. The block is great. There's a fantastic counter, which you can do fairly simply. It's not too difficult of a timing, which I quite like. There's a lot of different levels to this, which makes it enjoyable. And the weapons are great. You've got so many different varieties of stuff. You unlock about 6 levels in, there's a boss with a big scythe. And the minute you get that scythe, you become the biggest badass on the planet. That scythe weapon is somewhat overpowered and it's deeply satisfying to use. You mentioned that the beginning levels were hardest for you. And I think, although that was negated for me because the game wasn't as challenging, you can kind of see why, because this game has an upgrade system which you have to use. You need to upgrade your weapons as you go along. But there's only so many points you get from enemies, and you may want to spend those on health potions, when really getting another upgrade to your sword is probably more useful. So it's constantly making you do decisions, constantly making you think, should I get the health item to keep me safe in the short term, or should I go for the long-term benefit of dealing more damage? And I love that. I love when games give you that option. As you get later on in the game, you have so much money, it kind of stops being a problem. You've probably passed that hump. But for the first 5 to 6 levels, you don't get that choice. You have to make those decisions in the moment. And that's really fun game design. I like that a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And yeah, as you said as well, like with the combat and the way that the enemies get, they lose limbs and get dismembered and stuff, it's worth just really noting how impressive it is that basically every enemy in this game knows how to fight without different limbs. There'll be an enemy that there'll be like, let's say like a pretty typical enemy early on is like, ninjas from some rival clan, and they'll have a bunch of animations and moves for when they're totally fine, but then they'll also have a bunch of moves for when they've got one arm and when they've got one leg and when they've got no legs. And it's like, that's an insane amount of detail and effort to go to that you rarely ever see in video games. I think the only game I can think of that has better kind of dismemberment stuff than this is probably Dead Space. Like, other than Dead Space, I can't think of any game that has a more satisfying way that the game unfolds and responds to you literally chopping off people's arms and legs. It's so impressive.
And there's an exact combo you can press which guarantees the removal of a limb as well. So it knows what it's doing. It's telling you to do that combo, lob a limb off, chop them down with a takedown, and then move on to the next person. It's really fluid in motion. There are minor issues with it. The camera is a little finicky. You get used to it, is what I'll say. The first level or two, I thought it was going to be my endless bugbear, and that it was going to be the bane of my life. But you kind of get used to it. You kind of adapt to it in time. And you can always center it behind you with just the touch of a bumper on the back of the pad, which is kind of handy. I'd also say there's a certain enemy type which is borderline cheap. Anything with a projectile is an absolute nightmare. They just sap health from you like you can't even believe it. You have to make a beeline to them before you can do anything else. Otherwise, you will just die. There's also flying enemies are a bit of a nightmare because the tossing of arrows and the lining up of projectiles it's not great. It's not ideal. You kind of need a bit of time to line up effectively. And by then you've been beaten the heck down. So that's not ideal either. And the worst one, and the thing that caused me pretty much all my deaths, the ninja dogs. Those dogs just absolutely wrecked my life. Now, I just could not... I don't know what the timing is for those little shits, but they just ruin you before you even know what is happening. If you get 3 or 4 of them at once, I would just cry inside because I knew I was in line for going back to a checkpoint.
Yeah, I just ended up like, because so in this game, there's a lot of different enemies, and the game does a great job on the whole of being one of those games where you might come up against a new enemy, and for the first few times you fight them, you're literally thinking like, this is broken. I can't, he's so overpowered. I can't figure out what the hell I'm doing wrong. I just keep dying. And then once you kind of figure out the systems and figure out how to take advantage of that enemy, you start beating them consistently. And it's really satisfying and great. With the dogs, I never figured them out. I literally, if the dog showed up, I just used you have effectively magic spells. They're like ninja, like ninpo ninja skill stuff. I just had one that made 3 fireballs hit stuff. And whenever I saw the dog, I was like, right, let's use the spell. Let's fireball the dogs because can't deal with the dogs. Dogs and ninjas that throw explosive knives. The 2 things that I could never figure out in this game. they completely ended me. But everyone else, I figured out, and I've worked out how to beat them, and it was pretty great. So, yeah, a big fan of the combat system in this game. And again, I think it looks great for a game that's so old. You won't be playing this thinking it looks particularly dated. I mean, we've played a lot of old first-person shooters lately, and they look a mess, frankly. Whereas this looks sharp. I mean, I think it's got some improvements on the One X or the Series X and S consoles. It's got a bit of an upscale job on it, but yeah, it looks sharp, feels responsive to play. There's not a lot of negatives to this thing.
No, it does look legitimately pretty good. The story is just ninja nonsense. You don't really need to pay much attention to it. The cast of characters is fun. There's some dubious outfit choices for some of the female characters in the game, but it's so over the top and it's so silly. I can't even get angry about it.
Yeah, I mean, this game comes from the same studio as Dead or Alive, so that's to be entirely expected. The creator of this game, the creator of this game is the creator of boob physics in Dead or Alive, so you're gonna get some pretty dodgy stuff. But yeah, as you said, I mean, this is full of just wacky ninja nonsense. I didn't expect the story to be quite as mad as it is. This game just takes you to a bunch of ridiculous places. Like you're battling your way up the Statue of Liberty. You're jumping out of planes on a motorbike for some reason. You're in a coliseum. It's like it goes to a lot of crazy places that I didn't necessarily expect. I kind of thought it would stick a bit more traditional kind of ninja action, and instead it's just a big stupid action movie with demons.
Yeah, it's a massive global tour, isn't it? It's kind of fun. I kind of like it. The world designs themselves are pretty linear. There's quite a few little nooks and crannies with hidden secrets and, skulls you can collect. And you need to explore environments to get health upgrades, which, by God, you will need by the time the game finishes. Yeah. No one's getting through this without a health upgrade or two. You need them. But there's just a lot to like here. It's a very enjoyable game. The boss fights are fantastic. Some of the boss fight designs in this are so much fun. Everybody's got their own patterns you need to learn and to deal with. And okay, some of the later bosses just become beat them again, but this time they've got 10 henchmen, and that can go die in a ditch. But on the whole, it's pretty fun. There's elements of annoying. There's lava levels later on, which can absolutely go die in hell. They were dreadful as well. But on the whole, the game is actually quite fun. And playing through it on Acolyte difficulty, as it very charmingly calls it, I like that. Nice, it doesn't passively aggressively call me a loser like something like Pathologic 2 would. It just goes, oh yeah, you want to just start off, cool. But the thing about that is I finished the game and I had a few bits of trouble with the final boss, but I finished the game and my first thought was I'd actually quite like to buy this to play it on normal in my own time and get better at it, because the game encouraged me to learn its systems. It encouraged me to get into its world rather than, beating me over a stick saying you're not good enough for me. It said, no, come on, let's learn you up. Let's train you up on how to approach this game so you are ready to play it on the harder difficulty should you wish to. I think that's fantastic, and I applaud Team Ninja for doing that. If you are somebody who's looking at this game and thinking, I've heard this is too difficult to, really give a go to, play it on easy. In many ways, it's probably the most fun mode to play it on because you're going to be less frustrated. You can just enjoy the combat for what it is, with a fair amount of challenge, which doesn't become overwhelming. I think that's kind of the fun way to play this game. And I think Team Ninja made a game which suited that, rather than punishing you or mocking you for playing it on that difficulty. And I applaud that.
Yeah, no, I think, they've done a fantastic job with the difficulties in general in this game. I mean, as I said, I played on medium, and I probably had throughout the whole game, which, takes about, you're looking at, it's a pretty long game, actually. I think it took me about 12 hours in the end. And I probably had about maybe 2 moments where, I was getting real throw a controller against the wall level angry, because it was just completely relentlessly beating me up. And that's not bad for, the default difficulty of a game that's had such a reputation for being brutally difficult. It's not, again, like, it gives you an opportunity to learn its systems and learn how to, work these fights. Like, they won't just put 20 enemies in front of you at the start of the game. They'll ramp it up slowly. There'll be a few enemies. Maybe they'll throw in a new type of demon alongside a bunch of enemies you've already fought. So you kind of get eased into figuring out how to fight that new enemy. It's all really smartly designed. And I think that for games in general, like you said, it's great to have easy mode options, but the most important thing is to have well-defined and sensible difficulty settings. And this game nails that. Like, as you said, the easy mode isn't just, dumb baby mode where anyone can beat it. It's still an interesting challenge, and it teaches you to get better at the game, and it makes you want to try the next difficulty up. And medium's the same, because then you unlock the harder difficulties, which I've not played them, but from looking online and kind of reading a bit more on them, it sounds like the harder difficulties are absolutely just the most punishing things in the world. But you only unlock those when you beat the whole game on medium. So it's you're building up to them, and I think that's just really clever. It's really well designed, and I think a lot of more recent games, particularly action games, could learn a lot from how Ninja Gaiden's decided to structure its difficulty settings.
Absolutely. I mean, I know Team Ninja has moved on to Neo and Neo 1 and 2, and it's had a lot of success, which kind of apes the Dark Souls formula more than a traditional hack and slash. But I would be really excited about them announcing a new Ninja Gaiden game in this day and age, because I really think they could do a fantastic job with this series. Maybe they have got one in the works. I don't think they do. It seems like they've left it behind for now, but this is a really fun game to play, even 13 years after it was released on the Xbox 360. And I'd just be very excited to see what these guys could do with new hardware, new experiences, to see where Rio is now, because Rio's a cool character, man. That's a pretty cool dude.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I played quite a lot of the Dead or Alive fighting games, and he's in that, so he was kind of my main character in that for a long time. So, I was happy to play some action games with him in. I read that apparently Ninja Gaiden 3 didn't quite live up to the hype of the first two, so I don't know if the series has kind of met its end, unfortunately, because of that. But yeah, I'd love to see it come back. I think there's a lot more potential in this world. You can do a lot more crazy, wacky ninja stories, and yeah, just pretty much keep the combat as it is here. Just tighten it up a little bit for the the latest generation of consoles. But beyond that, it's already ready to go.
So yeah, I mean, this game will pretty much be gone by the time you hear this podcast. You can buy it with a discount, but I think they're charging like 20 quid for it. And you could buy this game for all of a penny in any secondhand store nowadays. So
yeah,
maybe wait for an actual sale rather than the fake Game Pass sale, which often happens. But I would be picking this up. I'm looking to pick this up myself once it drops to a reasonable price, because I thoroughly enjoyed this. I had a lot of good times with this. I happily recommend it. I beat it in almost like a 24-hour just merciless punishing session of it. I just got proper into it. It was a very fun time. And yeah, I'd probably give this an 8 out of 10, and I didn't expect to be giving it that score. I was very apprehensive about this game, but I ended up thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm the same here. I gave this an 8 out of 10. When I first hit my kind of first wall as early as chapter 2, I thought, if I even manage to get through this, I'm not going to particularly like it. But then, yeah, as it went on, there's just no way it deserves less. It's just such a well constructed, tight action game, and yeah, I'd love to see more like this in the future. All right, then. So let's wrap up the show this week with a bit of news, and we got a few unfortunately negative stories this week. Let's open it up with the big hack that has happened at CD Projekt Red. Now, so apparently CD Projekt Red have been hacked over the last couple of weeks, and people have stole a lot of stuff from them. They've stole all of the source code for The Witcher 3, the source code for Cyberpunk. Apparently, they even got the code for a completely unreleased version of The Witcher 3 that got abandoned. And then they also took a bunch of, personal stuff like emails, documents from people. So not a good thing at all. But CD Projekt, for their part, they just threw it up on Twitter. They just owned up to it. They said, this is happening. We're not giving in to demands. Here it is. And, that's probably the best way to handle it, rather than paying some ransom to a bunch of dicks. So fair play for that. Now, did you see much on this, Josh? The most important thing is, did you see the message that got left for them? Because it's real cringy.
It's proper internet leet speak, isn't it? It's pretty awful. It's the kind of thing you kind of saw a lot of in the mid-noughties, and made me want to die then, and makes me want to die even more now. It's been a tough few months for CDPR. They've had a time. Let's be honest, and this really is just the shit on the shit sandwich at this point. It's really not been a good few months for them, but I think they've dealt with this in the only way that you can as a company, which is just to accept it's happened, own up to it. By all accounts, it looks like most personal information is secure. They're not certain, but it's looking like most is. So that's the main thing. And if you do want to, for whatever reason, buy a load of old CDPR emails, then well, get on the dark web. I imagine they're for sale for a very expensive price.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like, they're reporting that the game code has been sold on there, with the caveat that the buyer said that they can't give it to anyone else. But I mean, who even knows? It's all a mess. But yeah, it's a real shame that, in the words of the hackers, that CD Projekt have been epically pwned. Because yeah, it's just a real shame. It sounds as well like these people are definitely from the UK, because the message said that where is it? Where's the quote here? Your public image will go down the shitter even more. I mean, that's an incredibly British way of speaking. So, on behalf of our country, we're very sorry for this. I mean, whoever did this random basement dweller who probably thinks Shadow the Hedgehog is his spirit animal. But yeah, just yeah, bad times. But as I said, good for them for just owning up to what's happened and just saying to people, we're not going to be giving into it. So, all the best to them in the future, and hopefully this doesn't impact their studio anymore, because they've had a rough old time of things anyway.
Haven't they just? Christ.
Well, anyway, moving on to another bit of negative news. We are hearing early reports that the fantastic PlayStation 5 DualSense controller is starting to experience controller drift in its analog sticks, which is, it's not good. I mean, this happens to Nintendo Switch Joy-Con controllers, and as time went on, because I mean, when you think about it, the PS5's only been out a few months. As time went on with those Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons, people realized that realistically all Joy-Cons have the fault that will get this. It's just about how often you use it. Once you've used your Joy-Cons enough, they're going to start drifting, which, for people who don't know what that means, it means that basically the controller will just act as if you're pressing in like left at all times when you're not pressing it. So it's, it's really debilitating in terms of playing games. And as I said, yeah, if this is a hardware issue, it's a bad thing.
It's a bad thing. I'm slightly trepidatious to jump straight on this one. It's brought by the same law firm which is, suing Nintendo for their Joy-Con drift issues.
Yeah.
So I imagine there's an element of they're trying to tag on litigation to something at the same time, because if you're suing for one issue, do everybody else at the same time, because it's just a mountain of evidence. Fair. So there's an element of money to be made there. I think all controllers, since the dawn of time, have had a bit of drift in them. It's a thing that happens to controllers. It's annoying. But it's only with the Joy-Cons that it became really publicized how bad it was. I mean, I've had 2 Joy-Cons break on me for Joy-Con drift. I've had to fix them twice. They're that bad. And Nintendo should be paying through the gosh darn nose to fix this problem, because it's a widespread pandemic problem with their controllers. I will hold judgment on the DualSense for now. You're always going to get cases where people get a bit of drift in the controller. It's going to happen.
Yeah, sure.
It's just a guarantee it will happen. If in a couple of months' time we're seeing more and more stories of these things cropping up, and it seems to be more of a consistent problem, I'd be more quick to heavily condemn. But Sony haven't really had this problem before. The controllers on the whole are very well made. I mean, I found the Microsoft controllers more prone to drift than the old PlayStation ones were. But let's see if this gets to a Nintendo level problem, where Nintendo are still continuing to just bury their heads as far in the sand as humanly possible. I can't believe new revisions of the Joy-Cons haven't fixed this issue.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It blows my mind they've not tried to sort this.
Yeah, because I mean, for Nintendo's part, they've basically they're in a stance now where they fix everyone's Joy-Cons like no questions asked, but they refuse to own up to it being a complete, a widespread hardware issue, because there might be like legal ramifications to that. So they just keep fixing them all. But you've got to think, surely at this point, they've been fixing these Joy-Cons for about 2 years constantly. And surely the price of, a bit of R&D to make it like more reliable and not happen as often would be worth the price by now. Like, surely just getting some better Joy-Cons on the shelves, at least for new buyers of the console, would be a smart idea. And yet they haven't done that. So, anyway, let's see. I mean, as you said, this is early days. We're just getting sporadic reports of people experiencing DualSense controller drift. So hopefully it just remains sporadic, and that would be great for everyone. I do hope it goes that way. But there might be a world here where in a few months' time, this is just like the Joy-Cons, and it's just a matter of time for everyone, which, for me, I mean, I'm quite a retro-minded gamer as well. So like having hardware that has a clock on it like this is really frustrating for the idea of playing these things in the future, like as retro machines. The worst one for that was the Nintendo 64 because, I mean, fair play to them. They basically made up analog sticks, but the analog stick on the N64, it will, like, after it's been used a certain amount of time, it won't stay stable in its little holder, and you just can't use that controller anymore. So, like, at this point, to play N64 games with a proper controller, you have to find one that was unused in the time it came out. And I mean, I found one last year that had been sat in, like, it got sold to a computer exchange over here in the UK, and some guy just found it in his attic and basically never played it, and it was like a completely fresh controller, and it was near enough the best day of my life. Like, it's a perfect controller. There's nothing wrong with it, but that's going to get rarer and rarer as time goes on. So as a bit of a retro gaming nerd, like, there might be a situation where in 20 years, you literally can't use official Nintendo or Sony controllers to use these consoles. And that kind of sucks. But again, really early days. We'll see where it goes.
We'll see where it goes. But fix your damn controllers, Nintendo, you bastards. Yeah, what the heck? £70 you charge for these sodded things, you cheeky sods. What's going on?
Outrageous. Well, anyway, right then, let's move on to some better news. So we finally got a release date this week for Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which I am incredibly excited for. So Ratchet and Clank is coming out in June, which is quite soon, and yet also doesn't quite feel like launch window, which is what they promised.
Oh yeah, this is well past a launch window game. I mean, Christ, I don't know why it was even mentioned. These games were always going to get pushed back a little bit. In this current climate, I had no expectation. I didn't think when I saw this game's trailer that it would be out before September, October time, because I figured the Miles Morales team would be chewing up most of Insomniac Games' resources. Yeah. And so I didn't even think it would be a launch window game. So when they announced it, I was amazed. So June is still earlier than I thought I'd get it. So I'm kind of happy. I'm looking forward to this game. I love the Ratchet and Clank series. Insomniac haven't made a bad game for about 15 years now. So, it's going to be good. So, I'm pretty hyped for this. I'll be getting my pre-order in, hopefully at a website which isn't charging £70 for it, because I still refuse to pay that for a solid PlayStation game.
Yeah, I'd love to not pay £70, but probably will. We'll see. But yeah, anyway, this looks great. I mean, they showed more gameplay footage, which looked equally as great as we saw it last time. Nothing surprising, but it just, looks really special. And I mean, May and June are ramping up to be some pretty great months for games at this point. You've got Resident Evil Village, Deathloop, Ratchet and Clank, Mass Effect trilogy for people who like Mass Effect. You got some really good stuff coming up. So yeah, it's been a fairly quiet early part of the year, for particularly on the newer consoles maybe, but yeah, some really good stuff coming up. So that's definitely good times.
Yeah, it's exciting to see. There are some good games coming up. I've been a bit of Nier Replicant as well at the start of April. That's going to be good. And I've got my copy of Persona 5 Strikers winning its way over to me, ready for launch day. I am hyped as heck to be playing that game. I can't wait. I'm going to just fob off Game Pass for a few days and just dip back into the world of Joker and Co. That's the Joker I need, Rallycross. Thank you very much.
Sounds good to me, definitely. Okay, then. Well, one more story this week. We would be remiss if we didn't spend a bit of time covering the latest thoughts of visionary director Josef Fares before we wrapped up the show.
So, friend of the show.
Friend of the show, visionary director Josef Fares, of course. Yeah. So this week, Josef Fares has been talking about Game Pass and the subscription models for gaming in general. And he doesn't get it, Josh, basically. That's what this comes down to. He doesn't get it. He said, I'm not really sure if the Netflix system will work with games. I'm not sure how that's going to work in the long term. The only thing that scares me a little bit is you have a system where it's like, how do you get paid? I'm not sure. Now, visionary director Josef Fares, Josh, his latest game, A Way Out, is in Game Pass via EA Play. So it's in a subscription service via a second subscription service. And his game before that was Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, of course, which was also in Game Pass for a year. So this man has had games in Game Pass for the longest time and apparently just does not understand how you get paid. So I don't know, maybe someone in his company wants to fill him in on how they got paid for these, because he doesn't know, Josh.
Poor Josef Fares, so tied up in his visionary direction that he can't you can't actually see how any of his products are making money. We wouldn't have even played a Josef Fares game if it were not for Game Pass. You know, A Way Out. I did buy A Way Out, but I'm not going to play it until I play it in Game Pass because that's how I play all games these days.
That's how we work.
You know, it's a bizarre comment. It's a classic VD Josef Fares comment. Let's be honest. He's on his stream of consciousness. He's talking nonsense. He's desperate to say fuck the Oscars, but he's done that bit already. So, you know, he's probably going to say fuck the Netflix before this thing's out.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And yeah, I'm sure I'm sure when his new game comes out, It Takes Two, we'll probably play that in EA Player via a bit of Game Pass. So maybe then he'll understand how he got paid. But for now, he's just going to keep being slightly confused. Such is his magnificent vision. But anyway, I think that is all the news we've got this week. So this is the end of the show. If you want to catch us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Beat the Sheet. We're usually posting there about the new games coming to Game Pass, games leaving. Maybe I'm posting some sassy stuff about my ugly dirt car because I have to play dirt, stuff like that. It's good stuff. And if you want to send us an email, you can find us at beatthesheetpodcast@gmail.com. So yeah, feel free to get in touch with us there. We're always happy to hear from our listeners. And yeah, until next time, I am Andy Wood, and I'm still at 65% complete on the sheet, struggling to make much ground at the moment because there's a fair cadence of games getting added lately.
And unlike this big loser, I am Josh Stevenson, and I have made progress on the sheet. I've jumped up an entire percentage point to 55% of the sheet, and I was very nearly at 56% of the sheet, but I just fell short at the very last minute. But a damn good effort. May I just pat myself on the back for another storming week of Game Pass completions.
Nah, it's a good effort. Just the 10% behind now. That's nice for you. I mean, if only you hadn't spent 6 hours trying to beat 1999 Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you'd actually be at 56%. So that'd be nice.
I regret nothing. I regret nothing.
I fully expect to be scrolling down the sheet in about 3 months' time to see that you've snuck Who Wants to Be a Millionaire onto it. Like, hang on.
But still know why. Because I can't beat it. I just can't win.
You still don't know the answer to the question about the bees. You just can't do it.
What about the bees?
All right. Well, anyway, thanks a lot for listening this week, everyone, and we will catch you next week.
Goodbye.